Hey everyone, it's Sevy. Spiral Abyss has refreshed its enemy groups for 3.8 and thankfully I can confidently say that it's not as difficult as last time. There are some nuisances in terms of grouping, enemy waves, and the usual, but surprisingly, the constipated beasts have sat this one out. So in this guide we'll go through floor 11 and 12, and to avoid having to verbally repeat my usual general tips for doing Spiral Abyss, I'll just flash them on screen here and you can pause to take a quick read. This cycle's blessing is a buff to normal, charged, and plunging attacks and bonus attack speed for on-field characters. Anyway, let's get to it. Floor 11 starts with a defend the monolith in the first chamber, then some mobs in the succeeding chambers. The first half is enemies with Pyro and Cryo shields, so bring the appropriate elemental counters like Hydro and Pyro respectively. National team is a very straightforward solution, but of course other teams can suffice too. On the second half, you have mobs that like to move around, so if you have an Animo grouper like Sucrose, Kazuha, or Venti, this would be the half to put them in. Alternatively, a freeze team can also be very effective in maintaining the grouping. There aren't any particular element limitations here, so I just went with a Sucrose Aggravate team. Anyway, let's get started. In Chamber 1, we have a Defend the Monolith. The first wave is a Ruin Crab and 2 Ruin Snakes. You can go for the Ruin Crab first, in which case the snakes will probably do a drill attack and then reappear where you are. This will ensure that their AoE attacks won't touch the monolith at all. Once they're clumped together, your AoE attacks should be able to make easy work of them. Next are 2 Ruin Cruisers and 1 Ruin Jellyfish. The Jellyfish will follow you around, but the Cruisers won't, and they will long-range target the monoliths, so go for them first. You might have to take care of them individually unless you have a strong grouper like Kazuha, and if you have to kill them individually, just kill them ASAP.
Let's light it!
The second half has Nobushi and Kairagi. These will spawn in groups around the monolith, so hopefully you have a means of grouping them, whether through an Animo unit or through a freeze team. Anyway, try to stagger, disable, or attack them as soon as they spawn so that they don't get the chance to charge towards the monolith. Some might target the monolith initially, but if you attack them, they may start targeting you instead, and that way you can aggro them away from the monolith. Again, when you fight them, try to stay away from the monolith so that their attacks won't hit it.
Wings of Darkness! The perfect distance! Power that ended Hyperbloom!
The last enemies on this chamber are a pair of Kairagi. I basically did the same thing where I headed straight to them and attacked them right away so that they would aggro me instead of the monolith. From there, I just fought them as usual, trying to get their HP down simultaneously. Now remember that it's okay if one regenerates its HP since there's no time limit on this chamber. Instead, focus on just keeping it away from the monolith and keeping that monolith health as high as possible. Moving on to Chamber 2, at the start we have a Pyro Abyss Mage, a Dendro Samatril, and 2 Hilichurl shooters that spawn all around the arena. Target the Samatril first since the vines can get in your way and the Pyro Mage will eventually follow you. Once they're dead, you can go after the Hilichurl shooters. The next wave has 2 Mitochurls and a Rogue. The Mitochurls will follow you, but the Rogue won't, so head to the Rogue and you'll be able to hit all the enemies at once with AoE attacks.
Witness the power!
The last wave is on the other end of the battlefield. It's 3 Abyss Mages, and you can stay on the edge farthest from them to make them teleport to you. If you have an Animo to swirl their shields, it could make things faster. Either way, you can take out the single Cryo Mage first to prevent them melting you, then target the Pyro Mages after, or just hit them all with your AoE attacks if you group them sufficiently. On the second half, we start with 3 small Bathysmal Bishops. They're easily staggered, so once again, having a grouper will be helpful here. I prefer to approach them from one side so they can all be pushed into each other, but be conscious of keeping them grouped as they do tend to swim around. If you can't stagger or disable them, you could first dodge their ranged attacks and then edge bait them for easier grouping. And then 2 large Bathysmal Bishops will spawn. Just be mindful of dodging their energy-draining projectiles. You can also try attacking them from one side to keep them grouped. The time limit on this chamber is still long, so you don't have to rush, and to make the third chamber go even faster, you can take some time to recharge your character's bursts. For the third chamber, we get a Pyro Lector and Cryo Herald. Go for the Pyro Herald and the Cryo one will follow you. You generally want to dodge the Pyro Lector's attacks, which can be anticipated by watching the floor. It will stay in place, so it's easy to target. Then with your AoE abilities, you'll be able to hit the Cryo Herald as well. But watch out for when it jumps and plunges, since those are strong attacks that can drain stamina. So as always, dodging and iframing will help you a lot.
Teamwork is dreamwork! Zula, get them! No, my sword! Ring cutter! Adventure time!
Truth hurts!
In the last half of this floor, we get some Eremites. The first group spawns in a line, so I go in from one side and push them all into each other, but they will all generally go after you. Then there's a Geo Summoner in this group, so if you see his crocodile come out, you can kill it first to damage and stun the Eremite.
Pound into the ground! Welcome here.
The second wave has a Dendro Dancer, so try to avoid the cage that she'll spawn. But again, they will all attack you, so grouping them is pretty easy and it's a quite straightforward battle.
Animal test 6308. You're not done yet. Go get it, you leg! Yeah.
Now let's move on to floor 12 and take a look at what we're dealing with. In the first half, Hydro is very recommended to easily break the Pyro Lector's shield. Then you want a team that deals good AoE damage to counter a lot of the mobs here. Some good team template options are Freeze, National, and Hyperbloom. Nilu should also work really well too, but then the Rift Hound's Corrosion will be a huge hurdle. So for me, I used a Hyperbloom Freeze or Hyperfridge team in the first half, and then for the second half, a Quicken team is highly recommended since it's especially effective against ASIMON and good against the first and third chambers. Aggravate, Hyperbloom, and Spread are gonna be your best candidates. Other high-power single-target teams that can kill ASIMON fast enough will also work if you have the right units and high enough investment on them. For 12-1-1, there are 10 baby Rift Hounds that come in a first and second wave. If you have a grouper, you can start fighting them in the center, but since I don't, I'd rather start the fight by edge baiting them. From there, I just group them up and pick them off simultaneously. Having AoE damage definitely helps a lot here.
Spring force! Witness the power of lightning Shark! Lights out. Now I'm mad. Body and mind. Time to act.
And then when all the hounds are dead, the third wave will spawn with a Pyro Lector and 2 big Rift Hounds. Focus fire on the Lector, as the 2 Rift Hounds will follow you anyway. Ideally, your attacks will also damage the Rift Hound while attacking the Lector. Then when he enters into a shielded state, just keep your Hydro application on and any Pyro counter elements targeted towards him. If he summons the Pyro structure, destroy that to reduce his shield by a lot. If the hounds are still alive after you kill the Lector, then just deal with them as quickly as possible. The second half comes in 3 waves as well. First are 3 constructs. Group them to kill them quickly, which you can do with an Animo Grouper or just by going to the right side and letting them approach you.
Swirl, Mark 2! Animal test 6308. Yeah.
The second wave has 2 bishops that spawn right where you started. Like the constructs, group them and dispose of them quickly. They are easily staggered, which can help you stun them for faster disposal and to prevent their attacks. And if you need easier grouping, you can also edge bait them. Now for the last wave, the challenge is that they're too far apart, so we want to group them first. Go to either the left or right side all the way to the edge. The two rogue Hilichurls should be lined up in your vision, and the farthest rogue will start running towards you while the nearest one stays in place. And make sure to dodge the Lawachurl's charge attacks. If done correctly, the two rogues should be beside each other, which can allow you to more easily group and deal AoE damage to them. However, you also want to keep the Lawachurl close so that you're damaging all three of them simultaneously as much as possible. It may help to keep yourself at the edge of the map so that if the Lawachurl charges at you, they'll get stopped at the edge. This might be trickier to group, and RNG can be a pain, so if it's a bad run, you can either settle for 2 stars for now or reset the chamber. For the second chamber's first half, there are 2 Pyro Fatui and 2 Eremites. Go to either the left or right Fatui first and make their back face the other Fatui. They're programmed to jump away from you, so you can exploit this to force them closer to the other Fatui, which makes it easier to deal with them. You can focus on the Fatui since the Eremites will follow you anyway, and they'll be caught in the crossfire. You can even bait them to go where the next wave will spawn, so that it's more convenient.
Spring forth! Lights out. Our bond is strong. Rain outlines your fate.
The second wave consists of 4 Shadowy Husks. I advise targeting the ranged one since the others will also follow you anyway, while the ranged one tends to move further away if left alone. Then when the Geo summons his shield, get rid of it by going behind him. When the ranged knight dies, you should have dealt a lot of damage to the others already, or even killed 1 or 2 in the process. It's possible you might want to target the Pyro one next. I found that he's usually further away, and you can focus on him while the other remaining Husks will follow you.
Propagate! Shiver! Germinate! Scatter! Witness the power. I'll settle this. You can't run.
Then in this half we have the ASIMON. If you fought previous Abyss cycles or the overworld version, you'll know that this is pretty simple. When it goes to its invisibility phase, you can track it by debuff markers or doing AoE damage and seeing where the damage numbers are. Instantly disable it by inflicting it with Quicken, then unleash as much damage as you can while it's down. If your damage is not enough, it'll enter a second invisibility phase. You can predict where it'll teleport ahead by the direction it's facing. Rinse and repeat until it's dead. If you have enough damage, it's possible to kill it without a Quicken team. If you don't have Quicken but have Electro, you can make it visible by hitting the parts with Electro enough times.
As you wish, me.
Power that ended hype! Animal hypostasis emulation! Absorption test! Animal test 6308! Oz reveal!
Then in the last chamber first half, the first wave has 2 Eremites here. I advise focusing on the female one with the blue aura. The other Eremite will naturally approach you. Try not to get hit by the slowing water debuff of the female one too, as that will mess with your cooldowns.
Scatter! Out of my way! Propagate!
Once they're dead, a Mirror Maiden and Eremite Loremaster will spawn. It doesn't really matter which one you target first, though I prefer going after the Eremite first. She'll spawn her Pyro Scorpion, which you'll want to destroy ASAP to stun the Eremite and make her easier to kill. As for the Mirror Maiden, just watch out for her attacks, bubbles and cage, put the pressure on her, and follow her when she teleports. Disabling her helps a lot, so she won't be able to teleport as often.
Rain outlines. Scatter! Spring forth! You can't run! Out of my way! Out of my sight!
And finally, for the last chamber, we have the 2 life-linked baptismal bishops. At the start of the battle, save your bursts for when they jump and link themselves together for a while, since that's when they're grouped together. Many of their attacks will also cause them to stay beside one another, and that's your best opportunity to deal damage simultaneously. Keep track of their HP bars. The Cryo Bishop's bar is on the left, while the Electro Bishop is on the right.
Reveals hey, go away! Wings of darkness!
Eyes on me!
Animal test 6308. Swirl, Mark 2. Absorption test. Uglade!
No rest for the...
You want to distribute your damage equally so that you can defeat both at the same time or right after another. If one gets reduced to 0 HP, they will enter into a revival state, wherein if the other one doesn't die soon enough, the previously defeated one will regenerate HP and cause your run to take longer. If you have a bad run, just reset.
Absorption test. Hey, go away! Midnight fantastic.
And that is it for this Abyss guide. I definitely think this cycle is a lot more manageable than the previous ones. It kind of makes me wonder if this is supposed to be a breather before they introduce another torturous one when Fontaine rolls around. But anyway, let me know in the comments what you think of this Abyss and what teams you used here. If this video helped you out, don't forget to leave a like, consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't already, and I will see you all soon. Take care!